Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Police tell us to stop running red lights. Fine, we'll just extend how long it stays green. I live in a subdivision connected to a major road. The road out of the subdivision has a traffic light. In the morning, nearly everybody needs to turn left for work. Even if you want to turn right, you're simply stuck there because there isn't enough room for more than one car. To compound the problem, the traffic light is green for no more than 5 seconds. We may get 4 to 5 cars out legally, then you have to wait another 3 to 4 minutes before the light switches. As you can imagine, this causes people to run the light, swerve around somebody they thought should have gone, etc. It's a grab bag of idiots in cars, myself included. If you roll up to the light and see that you're 15 cars back, you know that you've just added 10 minutes to your commute simply trying to get out of your subdivision. Well, because of all of our reckless driving behavior, the police communicated via our HOA that we needed to knock it off. They had a police car parked near our area every morning for a week to keep us on our best behavior. Our board tried to work with the city to lengthen the light, but to no avail. That's when a hero emerged. We get a random email to the HOA distribution list from an anonymous person. They laid out our plan. There's a pedestrian crosswalk light at the before-mentioned intersection that basically goes unused. In my 10 years of living there, I've never seen it used. There just isn't any pedestrian traffic. The subdivision hero devised a plan on how to use this crosswalk to our advantage. Basically, one person in their car needs to simply walk over and hit the push button to cross and run back to their car. When the light switches, we now get 30-ish seconds to alleviate our traffic jam. Everybody's joining in, and it's hilarious. My oldest daughter got to do it the other day, and other cars in line were rolling down their windows and cheering her on. It's possibly the best neighborhood bonding experience possible. I'm sure our longer lights are screwing up something further down the line, but none of us really care. We're now on our best behavior since we have about 5 times longer to get through the light. And our next story. Cheater ends up in jail. When I was 15, I met an older guy, let's call him Tom, through some friends of mine. He was 21 and had his own apartment. It was like we met and instantly started dating. My parents weren't a huge fan of his, but are super liberal and believe in letting their kids learn from their own decisions and mistakes. We dated for about 2 years off and on. Tom worked odd jobs but had barely graduated high school and was admittedly not very bright. In fact, he was kind of a jerk. He'd call me names and make fun of me in front of his friends or ignore me when I was upset. He also would talk to other girls without trying to hide it. But if I texted a guy from band class, then I was a slut. I liked him because I was dumb and 16. And honestly, to my 16-year-old self, he was really good looking. Well, it seemed Tom had a secret. He joined the National Guard at 18, and after basic or something, he got to go home for a short time because his mom was very sick. Well, I guess his mom recovered very quickly, but Tom never let the military know. Instead, he moved addresses and jobs often, so the military couldn't find him. Eventually, the janitorial company he worked for found out he was a runaway. I know there's a better term for this, but I don't know what it is, and fired him. So Tom was homeless. Guess who convinced her parents to let him stay with them for a while? That's right, me. So I'd get up and go to my senior year of high school, and my 23-year-old boyfriend would sleep all day and hide from my dad and didn't do much but drink. This continued for a month or so. One day, Tom asked me to drive him to a friend's house and said there was a party and he was going to stay in that town, about a 15-minute drive for the night. I had school in the morning and had known these friends for years, so I said, "Bye, honey," and kissed him goodbye as he got out of my car. That's the last time I ever saw him in person. The next day, he said he was going to continue to drink and stay in the other town with his friends. I was busy, so just said, whatever. It wasn't unlike Tom to drink for 3 days straight, then come home and crash. Well, on the 3rd day, his best friend called me and said, "Save all the elephants, Tom is cheating on you. He met Jane at my house party the other night and has been staying at her apartment even though she knows about you. He told me he wasn't going to tell you and see how long he could get away with it. But I knew I had to tell you because you don't deserve that." I was very upset. He was my first boyfriend and he'd broken my heart. I called Tom and begged him to come back, but he refused and said he was with Jane now and that I was insane and a bee and a head case and that we never really even dated. That's what he was telling that girl and her friends, that I just liked him but never dated him. I called the girl and tried to talk to her, but she just kept calling me pathetic and that I never dated Tom. Like I said, Tom lived with me. Everything he owned was at my parents' house, from snowboards to books to all of his clothes to some furniture. Literally everything this guy owned was at my house. When I was done being sad, I was mad. I called Tom on the 4th day and told him that all of his things were on my porch and that he could come get them when I was at school. I said he had 1 day to get his stuff or it'd be gone. He laughed at me and said he'd come get it soon. Well, I came home from school and it was all still there, so I loaded everything up, cleats, a stereo, clothes, everything a person could own, into my car and brought it down to Goodwill. Took me and 2 workers about a half hour to unload it all. I think they thought someone died because they didn't ask at all why all of a person's stuff would be donated. The next day, Tom calls me and says he's coming today and I better not start any drama because he was bringing Jane to help him get the stuff. I told him not to bother because I gave it all away. He flipped out and screamed, called me every name in the book, and had his new girlfriend come there alone to see if I was telling the truth. My dad told her to get the F off his porch or he'd kick her butt himself. Like I said, liberal. Tom called the police and they laugh at him. They knew he was 23, formerly AWOL from the Army, he'd been arrested several times, and staying with his 18-year-old girlfriend. It's a small town. They said if I told him to come get it and he didn't, then it's his fault. My friend that had called me originally was the one who drove Tom to Goodwill. The employees there also laughed at him and wouldn't give him anything. Tom was also super broke, so he couldn't afford to buy anything back. The friend told me later that he had to act concerned while with Tom, but that it was one of the funniest and most pathetic things ever, watching Tom beg Goodwill workers for his things back. Never saw Tom again, but he later impregnated Jane twice, and then she moved in with their kids into a battered women's shelter temporarily, and then gave the kids to her mom and checked into a psych ward as a direct result of Tom's abuse. Last I heard, he was in jail again. And our last story. Don't park on the street? Okay. I have a very large work truck that I park at home. I just barely have a spot for it in the backyard parking pad next to the garage off the back alley. My first day bringing the truck home, I wasn't confident enough to park it next to the garage, so I parked it on the street in front of my house. I didn't realize that commercial trucks weren't allowed to park there, but one of my neighbors kindly reminded me by immediately calling bylaw. I woke up to a warning on my windshield. The next day, I still didn't have the confidence to park on the pad, so I parked in the alley right up against my garage. An hour later, as I was working on the truck, bylaw rode up to me and kindly asked me to park elsewhere. He was sympathetic to my situation and understood how petty the whole thing was, but the law was the law and he was just doing his job. As nice as he was, he wouldn't tell me which of my neighbors was calling me in. I assume it was the one that had karaoke parties at his house 3 nights a week and whose friends park all over the neighborhood. I may not be allowed to park on the street, but I was allowed to park on my own property, however, and if that's what my neighbor wants, then that's exactly what they'll get. The clearance between the fence and the overhang of the garage is tight, within inches on either side. Because of that overhang and a utility box in the alley, I can only approach from one direction and I can only back in. There was no other way. Getting it in that spot without hitting the fence, the garage, or the utility box is extremely tricky. Doubly so if my neighbor across the alley also parks there, or if it's garbage day and all the bins are out. But my God, I'll get in that spot or die trying. For the next few days, I spent hours after work trying to figure out the best way to attack that angle. Back it up, stop, get out of the truck, check my clearances, get back in, readjust, and repeat, over and over and over again until I get it just right. The petty revenge? I often work late hours and come home when it's dark, and my backup signal is loud, really loud. You don't want me to park on the street? Then you get to listen to that racket. Every single GD night. And I'll savor every minute of it. I'm now a master at parking that truck. I know exactly where to place the truck, where to turn, and what to look out for. I don't even have to get out of the truck anymore. But every single night, I'll still take my sweet time getting it just right. Often I'll challenge myself to get it in one shot without having to readjust the truck. Doing so means being very slow and methodical. But at least my truck isn't an eyesore on the street anymore. Edit. I'm a self-employed contractor and this is my truck. If I had a better parking option, I'd obviously take it. Also, yes, you're right. My innocent neighbors don't deserve this. I'll ease off on the pettiness from now on. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.